From some of the best characters in film history to incredible plots and even better action moments, the MCU has it all. But there have been times where they've baited their viewers. Let's talk about it.
We will. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Starting with the trailer for Avengers Endgame. There's no way I could ever start this video without talking about one of the biggest projects that the franchise has ever had. Of course, they were particularly keen on not showing anything that would spoil the experience for viewers. Because of that, they even ended up making the trailers pretty different from the actual film, which is pretty understandable. I mean, the Infinity Saga was coming to an end. Ultimately, all fans were super glad that they went ahead with it. So how exactly did they trick everyone?
I'm the strongest Avenger, okay? So this responsibility falls upon me.
Well, you might remember that the trailer showed off this incredible scene where Thor was up against a horde of enemies all by himself. That too with his iconic weapon, the Stormbreaker. Turns out that was just promotional material for the film. What actually ended up happening was that we saw a really grounded and depressed version of the character, who had, ever since his last battle with Thanos, ended up getting really out of shape and played Fortnite all day long. All because he couldn't kill Thanos in time and blamed himself for it. In fact, that's the only version of the hero that you get to see in almost the entire film. But that's not all. There were even scenes showing off Black Widow preparing for a huge battle, but that simply wasn't the case. And of course, I can't talk about Endgame without mentioning Infinity War. I mean, it was the most anticipated movie of not just 2018, but arguably of all time. Not only that, but it did an incredible job at the box office as well. So it's pretty fair to say that the MCU wanted to make sure that the film that every other film was leading up to wouldn't get ruined.
I thought by eliminating half of life, the other half would thrive. But you've shown me that's impossible. And as long as there are those that remember what was,
and of course, it was Thanos' first time being on screen, though they pulled off the same thing as they did with the trailer for Endgame, making completely new footage that wasn't from the film. Because of that, you got to see Thanos go up against Cap with just 2 stones in his gauntlet. It really made it seem like Cap had a chance against the Mad Titan, and that he'd be the one to save the day. Everyone knows that's the opposite of what happened in the actual film. In fact, he already had all the stones by that point. Not just that, but another thing that the trailer was really adamant about showing off was the Hulk wreaking havoc. Anyone who's seen the movie might remember being incredibly shocked that it never happened once after the first few minutes. It's not until Endgame that he finally figures things out and can no longer return to his human form. And there's no way I could ever forget about Spider-Man Homecoming, even before Marvel co-owned the rights to the hero. Almost every film with him in it has had really misleading trailers, so of course, they had to keep the tradition going. The trailer showed him and Iron Man flying through Queens, which excited fans. Since he recruited Parker in Civil War, fans had been dying to get to know the relationship they shared on a deeper level. The team behind the film decided to take advantage of that opportunity and bring more fans in for the actual film. Instead, the film was actually about how the hero himself would be up against one of the biggest villains of his life, showing off how he has to grow, adapt, and deal with his personal dilemmas for the good of humanity. While Stark was only in the film for a really short period of time, that too was just to show that he was disappointed in him. Viewers were caught completely off guard, and a lot of people complained about the film not showing more of the dynamic between them. But I can't deny that it did a wonderful job of making him his own character, who doesn't need a bigger hero by his side to stand out.
Maybe you could go back in time and make it so that he never did?
Peter, we tampered with the stability of space-time to resurrect countless lives. Do you want to do it again now just because yours got messy?
On the other hand, I can't miss out on Thor Ragnarok. This one might not be the flashiest of the bunch, but it still managed to completely throw the audience off of what to expect from the film. In the trailer, you get to see Valkyrie sliding down the bridge with her weapons in hand, but that isn't the part that you should be concerned about. What's really interesting is that in the background, you get to see Asgard. That's completely fine, making everyone out there think that the trio has somehow managed to save the day, as was expected by fans, with a lot of them criticizing the basic plot and saying that the title gave it all away. But they underestimated Marvel. While that very same scene did happen, the background was completely different. Instead of saving the day, they could not save their home from its inevitable demise. Turns out that very same scene had destroyed Asgard in the final film. Of course, audiences were left completely shocked. Everyone thought that they had the entire film figured out, but the MCU proved them wrong and set them into motion, ultimately taking up the stakes for the character while he was up against Thanos to a completely new level. With that said, here's Iron Man 3.
The proposed element should serve as a viable replacement for palladium.
Thanks, Dan.
Unfortunately, it is impossible to synthesize.
This one ended up being pretty controversial. Why is that? Well, mainly because they basically recreated an ISIS video just to show off the bad guy in the trailer. A lot of people really thought that this was when Iron Man was finally going to die, and that they were setting up a villain for later on in the MCU. But it turns out that wasn't the case at all. Instead, they didn't want to give off anything that would tell viewers about the plot twist in the film. For the sake of spoilers, I won't be going into the actual twist, even though it's been a few years since it came out. But of course, everyone was more than just surprised. I mean, who could have thought that Stark interacting with a kid could ever be so wholesome? And absolutely no one expected to actually care about the kid, who understandably was a bit annoying at first. I have to say that it might just be the best Iron Man film out of the entire trilogy, and it did bring about a bunch of iconic memes as well. And finally, you've got Spider-Man No Way Home, arguably one of the biggest times that the franchise tricked each and every single one of its viewers, while at the same time hinting at the course of the MCU later on. And it's even more surprising that they pulled it off in one of the most anticipated MCU movies, at least after the Infinity Saga, since it's the film that finally connected everything for their future plans. So here's how it all went down. The film's trailer showed the hero fighting off against some of the biggest villains in the Spider-Man universe. That too, all by himself. But the film was actually quite different from that. Turns out that other variants of the hero, the ones that you got to see in all previous films with the character, would now be joining him to take all of them down. Everyone felt that this might be happening, but everyone involved in the film kept denying it. In the end, viewers were left screaming out of excitement when they saw the familiar faces of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield on their screens, and everyone loved the film. That's been a look into the times that Marvel tricked their fans.